So I just got done watching an amazing Porter Robinson video where he breaks down the vocal lead on his track Is There Really No Happiness? You know, the one that sounds like. Today, I'm going to show you how to make it along with two other artists' signature sounds, but I was surprised to find a common principle in all three examples. I call it the effect sculpture principle. You take a sound, apply an effect, and then shape it with basic tools like EQ and compression. Do that a few times and you got yourself a professional sound. Discovering this was such a light bulb moment for me, and it's really easy to learn. It's going to help take your sounds to new creative heights, so let me show you. This example is pretty much adding rhythm to a clean, sustained vocal. As I build out this effect change, focus on the big picture. Don't worry about the precise settings of each tool. I made that mistake before. It's a big waste of time. Instead, pay attention to what I'm trying to accomplish. You want to learn the overall principle, not the specific settings. So we start with a sustained vocal playing the melody. This vocal is a little raw, so we're going to do some sculpting first. Since we want this vocal to sound smooth, clean, and sit on top of the mix, we'll use EQ to remove some low end and give a small boost to the high mids, just using our ear to determine what sounds good. Now, I already hear a little bit of resonance, so let's try to cut that too. Great, now it's time for our first effect, and it's something Porter Robinson did a lot to his vocals on his Nurture album, and that's applying heavy autotune, pitching up the vocal, and adding some formant shifting. Doing this is completely up to you. If you want to make this artistic choice, go for it. Great, when pitching up and tweaking the formant, things can get a little messy, so there is a lot of cleaning up to do. We'll use another EQ and add some light compression to tame the dynamics. And before we get to the most important effect, it's time to add some light delay and a big, colorful reverb. These spatial effects will help the vocal feel bigger and ethereal. Alright, now it's time for the most important effect, the transcape from Kilohertz. This creates that rhythmic stuttering effect. It's very easy to use and it is a free plugin. This blue portion is when the gate opens, and when it's grayed out is when the gate closes. Use whatever rhythm you want, but if you're curious, these are the settings that Porter used. So this is what we get. Now there's still one last stage of sculpting, but this time it's with a multi-band compressor and an audio enhancer. I'm using the Fat Filter Pro MB to expand the mid and highs and bring back that airiness that this sound needs, followed by Lux from Clevgran as a last layer of audio polish. Now we have this. And added another vocal layer at a lower octave just to kind of support it, and all together we get this. Nice. Now take a look again at the effect sculpture principle in action. We started with sculpting, then added some effects with the pitching up and formant shifting. Then we went back to sculpting with EQ and compression, then more effects with delay, reverb, and the transgate, and back to sculpting with Pro MB and Lux. Going back and forth with effects and tone shaping is important in long chains like this, and even in very short chains like in our next example. The next artist we're going to cover is Phritz again. It's impossible to nail down one signature sound. His music and techniques are ever evolving, but one of his staple sounds are his gorgeous drones that sound like this. What we're trying to do is get a pumping drone drenched in reverb. To start, we need our drone sound, like this piano where I just held out the root and fifth note. Let's add reverb. The key is to use one with color and a very, very long decay. This reverb needs to take over so that we can't tell anymore that it's a piano. Then we throw in some sidechain compression. Now it is time to sculpt the sound with EQ. We need to put a blanket over it to kind of push it back from the mix, so we'll just cut out the highs and lows to taste, and we made this piano sound like a drone. That's it. Even in this short effect chain, we have our effects followed by sculpting. It's another effect sculpture. Our last example is on an artist you probably never heard of, from a genre you probably never heard of. The artist is Phritz, and he is one of the biggest forces behind a growing genre called Botanica. His track Summit has one of my favorite leads that I've ever heard in a song. Yeah, what an incredible and beautiful sound. And lucky for us, Phritz made a video detailing how he made this lead. It's a textbook example of the effect sculpture principle. We do this effects shape cycle 3 times, and it is so fun. You can totally use your stock plugins for this one, but I want to show you a multi-effect plugin that I've been using all over the place for the past year. It's Beam from Lunacy Audio. They just released version 2.0 where they added a ton of great features like a new chorus reverb dispersion effect called Haze, loads more presets, more impulse categories, and there's also a new preset pack from Venus Theory called Embers. Now, here's where we're starting. There's a lot of energy here, but it's dull, and it's going to get bullied by all the other sounds, so we need to excite this sound. So we're going to use this distortion effect called Volt inside of Beam. All we do is click and drag. Volt has an analog-inspired saturation, digital bit shaping, and multi-band compression, and I want to add a bit of everything. So what's it sound like now? After dropping the depth to around 25, it's pretty good, but we need to scream a little more, so let's add another volt. For this one, we'll just add saturation and a little more multi-band compression, and the depth will be higher, like at 75. Now, one thing Phritz does to make his distortion sound alive is add an LFO modulator to the filter and contour. So let's do that by clicking LFO 1 and dragging that to both our color and contour. Sounds amazing. So when effects are one after another like this, it's a serial effect chain. But one of the coolest things to do with Beam is making parallel effects chains, meaning the audio signal gets split up into 2 effects chains and comes back together at the end. You can do this in your DAW, but it's pretty cumbersome. It can be hard to keep track of. But with Beam, you can just keep adding them with no fuss. I want to add a little more life by adding a 3rd volt to the parallel chain here and making it identical to the one on top. But I'll tweak the filter and contour parameter, and I'll pen the top one to the left and the bottom one to the right. Cool, there's something really good here, but it needs a lot of sculpting. With all this saturation, the sound has gotten messy, so let's tidy it up with an EQ. Now I'm going to sculpt the tone with a multi-band compressor that's compressing the low end while expanding the mid-highs. Now let's do another effect sculpt cycle. With Beam 2.0, we can use Beam effects as individual plugins. So here's Beam's reverb called Space, and I'm going to use the Ruby Ambience preset. It uses a small colorful impulse response, and my mix is pretty low here. Now we're really getting somewhere. Time for some more sculpting, this time with some mid-side EQ. With the side boosting the high mids, and the mid EQ targeting a problem area right here. And both mid and side, we're rolling off some of the harshness. So this is taming the sound while enhancing the stereo image. And Phritz adds in another EQ, taking out even more lows and a little bit of the highs. And honestly, both of these EQs combined make a big difference. It's like we're sanding off the hard edges of the sound. We are finally getting close to the end. Now, Phritz adds in his own parallel delay with a 100% wet and 100% dry layer. He uses the ambient echoes preset in Echo Boy. Then he sculpts a wet signal by removing the low end and adds in a gate to make sure that the delay doesn't linger for too long. I originally wondered if I should include this delay. At first, it didn't feel like it made a difference, but then I put on headphones, and it does add a more lively character that a reverb just can't do on its own. So let me play the before and after for you again. At this point, it does sound like we sanded off too much of the lead's edge, so let's bring some back with another instance of volt. I'm going to add some heat and a little bit of crush. And then let's hear it, and we'll adjust the depth to where it feels good. All right, now it's time to sculpt this one last time. With all the saturation, you bet I'm going to use something like Soothe 2 to help target resonances. And then it's time for the last EQ. This one really impressed me. Here's a before and after. Yeah, big difference. And in context, here's what we have. Now, the more I learn from artists, the more I see the effect sculpture principle in play, and I hope you can spot it too. If you want to check out Beam 2 from Lunacy Audio, I have a link in the description, so please check it out, and I will see you in the next one. Later.